Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to your weekly dose of celestial goodness. As always, thank you for joining me in this space. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate that you watch these videos, so thank you. What a year this has been. 2020 will definitely live on in our collective memories as the year when so much happened in such a short time. There are years of my own life when it feels like nothing happens, and then years where it feels like lots of things are going on. Paulo Coelho said, and I talked about him last week, so make sure to check that video out if you haven't. Life has many ways of testing a person's will, either by having nothing happen at all, or by having everything happen all at once. The Constant Optimist, me, I can still see where there's beauty, love, and amazing happening. Yes, in 2020, I do know that there are some really, really good things happening for a lot of people that I know right now at this moment. And even just the thought of those things brings a smile to my face. However, given that I don't live wearing rose-colored glasses, I can also see where there's pain and where there are difficult moments happening for a lot of people. Yes, there are less than stellar things happening in our world right now. So, I like to try and understand the deeper meanings behind a lot of things. And sometimes that's not really possible, right? So I have to just try to find some inner peace, and hopefully that can extend outwardly. Last weekend, I attended a virtual retreat that was led by the Buddhist nun Pema Chodron. I'm not Buddhist, but I do believe that we can learn a lot from many different people and from many different practices. So Pema has written many, many books on just coping with difficult situations, and very wise advice for healing. The topic for the weekend was welcoming the unwelcome. I think we can all relate to that. Pema talked to the group from her home at the Gompa Abbey, which is located in a very remote part of Nova Scotia. So before she came out, I was actually wondering, does Pema even know what's going on in the world right now? I mean, she's tucked away in her abbey, right? But that thought dissipated very quickly when she began talking. She was very well aware of all the things happening in the world, and she was especially aware of how fear, that energy, seems to loom very heavily over all of our heads. Have you ever looked at someone's face and just seen wisdom? That's how I felt when she began to talk. She was a picture of serenity, and I felt very calm and hopeful and inspired. She started off with this prayer from Shanti Deva. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. May whatever diseases there are in the world never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid. May those who are bound be freed. May the powerless find power. And may beings think to benefit each other. In welcoming the unwelcome, we identified our capacity for holding difficult feelings without panicking. We can acknowledge these difficult events and experiences. We can identify that they're happening, and even just that act of acknowledgement is a powerful part of the experience and ultimately of our healing. Pema once said, "Life is glorious, but life is also wretched." It is both. Appreciating the gloriousness inspires us, encourages us, cheers us up, gives us a bigger perspective, energizes us. We feel connected. But if that's all that's happening, we get arrogant and start to look down on others. And there's a sense of making ourselves a big deal and being really serious about it, wanting it to be like that forever. The gloriousness becomes tinged with craving and addiction. On the other hand, wretchedness, life's painful aspect, softens us up considerably. Knowing pain is a very important ingredient of being there for another person. When you are feeling a lot of grief, you can look right into somebody's eyes because you feel you haven't got anything to lose. You're just there. The wretchedness humbles us and softens us. But if we were only wretched, we would all go down the tubes. We would be so depressed, discouraged, and hopeless that we wouldn't have enough energy to eat an apple. Gloriousness and wretchedness need each other. One inspires us, the other softens us. They go together. Pema used the phrase, collaborating with the world, frequently through the talk, and I saw this as the way in which we're all interwoven together, and how each of our individual actions influence and affects the whole. She also mentioned that growth really happens outside of our personal comfort zone, in a space she calls our challenge zone. What will we grow into because of this year? Right? I ask myself that a lot. One of the things that throws a lot of us out of our comfort zone is the topic of death. Very recently, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, an all-around amazing human being, a beacon of legal scholarship, and Supreme Court Justice, passed away. She had battled health issues, and she was still working, still living her personal legend. I opened social media, and I saw an interesting reaction to her death. Because of the political climate, many people expressed fears about what would happen next, especially with her seat. The energy of fear was so pervasive that I actually felt a little guilty that we wanted an 87-year-old woman battling pancreatic cancer to live longer so that we could be saved from something ominous. I know how important these times are, and I recognize the importance of her role. But in that moment, I just wanted to say, thank you, Ruth, for a job well done. Rest well, dear lady. I saw something similar when John Lewis passed away, the concern that our heroes were dying and that we would be powerless without them. I offer gratitude for what these people have done with the time that they have had here on earth. I do not think that we are powerless. I think these individuals have laid the foundation for us to carry on their legacy of love, of compassion, of care for our fellow human being. We must rise to the occasion as these individuals did. We must collaborate with the world to stand for what we value, what we believe in, and what we know to be an authentic and real way forward. Death is life's great mystery. I have researched how different cultures and people deal with the notion of death. It has been a mystery since the early civilizations. The ancient Egyptians built the Great Pyramids, many of them tombs. And they had a reverence for what they felt happened in the afterlife. No one truly knows what happens when we die, but each culture, each religion, each country, and whatever category you can put people in, they all have a way of looking at death. When I was growing up, I thought everyone had multi-day long celebrations to honor their dead. In Jamaican culture, especially in the country part where I'm from, A funeral had several components. Most of them were actually joyous. We had the grave digging. The community gathered together to watch the workers dig the grave. Then we had something called the Nine Night. Because of patois, for the longest time I thought Nine Night was Nigh Night. And really, it does go nigh into the wee hours of the morning, of the funeral morning, but it's actually Nine Night. My experience with the Nine Night is that it was a big celebration of the life of the deceased individual. There's music, old school music especially, and some people used what I would call old school instruments to play music and sing songs. The family of the deceased would also be responsible for feeding the community with fried fish, bread, and lots of other foods. Goat soup, spicy, that gets you right in the chest. And they're also responsible for drinks, and rum seemed to be the preferred drink. Because of this tradition, I always saw death as a celebration of life for someone who died. At the funeral, and Jamaican funerals can be long, the people remember the person with speeches, song, and scripture. After the funeral, a smaller group gathers at the house for a more intimate celebration of remembrance with more food. It wasn't until later in life, when I attended a funeral in America, that I realized that Jamaican funerals were different. They were more celebratory than somber. In researching death around the world, there are so many different traditions and viewpoints, and I don't have time to capture all of that in this video. But I did hear it say that Western culture largely views death as something to avoid, while many Eastern cultures see death as a transition to a next stage of the soul's existence. Now, I don't have any of the answers to that, but I do know that death is something that I feel like a lot of people fear. The reality, though, is that none of us are going to make it out of here alive. And death is what reminds us that we are not immortal. Now, unless there's someone out there who is immortal and I don't know about it, for the rest of us, our time here is finite. Also, sidebar, every novel or movie that I've ever seen or read where someone was immortal, they largely viewed it as a curse and not actually as a blessing. And that might be a topic for another time. But getting back to my point, what does death tell us about living? I think death instructs us that we should make the most of the time that we have, and that we should live courageously and without regrets. We should love, we should laugh, we should feel things. Yes, we're going to feel pain and hurt, but we should not live in those emotions. It's like Pema said, we can't live in the wretchedness. The writer Bronnie Ware wrote the book, The Top 5 Regrets of Dying People. 2 of those regrets were that people felt they did not have the courage to live a life true to who they were, but they lived how other people expected them to live. And also, they wished that they had let themselves be happier. Bronnie says, "The peace of each of these dear people found before their passing is available now, without having to wait until your final hours. You have the choice to change your life, to be courageous, to live a life true to your heart, one that will see you pass without regret." I do believe that death can instruct us on how to live more fully. I believe that we should tell people now that we love and care about them. We should give them their flowers while they're still here. We can also learn what we can from the legacy that people leave behind. I had a great friend from law school, Israel. He and I had very similar upbringings, and we could always share a laugh together. One of the things that I loved the most about him was that he was a true lover of life. He always said, "Why not?" When he said that, he usually was on his way to experiencing some delightful adventure, small or large. He worked hard, but he truly lived. When he died, I took a look at my life and realized that I was saving so many experiences for some future time that I wasn't even sure would happen. I started to live not just for myself, but to honor all of the people I knew who had died and could not enjoy the things that I could. In some ways, we live for those who are gone. I went out on work nights to performances. I traveled to places that I might have said no to previously for reasons like, oh, the cost, or oh, I have to work. There was always some excuse preventing me from living. I think you should save, and I think you should definitely get your resources in order. But I also think that you should say yes to life. There's a famous poem called The Dash by Linda Ellis, and it says, I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on the tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of birth and spoke of the following date with tears. But he said what matters most of all was the dash between those years. For that dash represents all the time they spent alive on earth. And now only those who love them know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love and how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left that still can be rearranged. To be less quick to anger and show appreciation more, and love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering that this special dash might only last a little while. So when your eulogy is read with your life's actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about how you lived your dash? And as an excerpt, the poet Mary Oliver, who I loved, said in her poem, The Summer Day, "Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me what it is you plan to do with your one wild and precious life." Maya Angelou, another great poet, in her poem, When Great Trees Fall, I'll just read a small bit. It says, "And when great souls die after a period peace blooms, slowly and always irregularly, spaces fill with a kind of soothing electric vibration, our senses restored, never to be the same, whisper to us, they existed, they existed. We can be and be better, for they existed. So many brilliant people have existed, and amazing people will continue to be born and die. And we will have to face life again, experiencing death over and over, growing and grieving. But knowing that whatever died existed, and whatever is remembered lives on. Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, "If you want to be a true professional, you will do something outside yourself. something to make life a little better for people less fortunate than you. I think what she was saying is that life is also about service. What can you do to offer service to humanity, especially in these times? What can you do to live your life fully so that when death does come, we would know that you enjoyed, that you loved, and that you cherished every ounce of your wild and precious life? I hope that this week's video gives you something to think about, and just to remember that the most constant thing in our universe is change, and it does involve the cycle that involves life and death. I do hope that you are enjoying these videos, and if you are, please do like and comment, subscribe, and share. May the stars shine brightly over your week, and I really do hope that this is a week in which you truly do feel alive. Thank you so much.